What's up, humans, and welcome to a new Psicoactivo. Happy Monday, everybody. I hope everybody had a tremendous weekend. Okay, so there was a lot happening over the last 48 hours because after the previous video that I dropped with you guys of Matt Laszlo's report on Congresswoman Luna talking about how she is considering her trust in Arrow and how the FBI did a 10 out of 10 presentation. Something kind of slipped through me because I needed to look more into it because it was a kind of a shocking statement, in my opinion. I wasn't expecting to hear that from Luna. She apparently said that Christopher Mellon, Lue Elizondo, and David Grush all were sick. And that's the reason the SCIF briefings did not go through. I was really surprised by that because I knew about Mellon because Mellon himself confirmed it. I, however, did not know that Grush and Elizondo were both sick too, according to her. And now, and this is the same thing that has been happening for a while, where people from the UAP caucus say something, and then the people involved say another thing, and you don't know who to believe because they're throwing out mixed messages. So Luna says that these three guys are sick, right? And then we see Lue Elizondo going to a UFO festival in Oregon where he meets with Danny Sheehan, George Knapp, and Jeremy Corbell at the same festival. And we got Lue Elizondo's lawyer, Ivan Hannel. He is the one who was at the hearings last year. He was the one who kind of crashed out against presumably Danny Sheehan and Colonel Carl Nell. I think he even challenged Carl Nell to a fight or something like that. And I'm going to be completely transparent here. I speak to Ivan occasionally. I think he's a good person. But yeah, what he is reporting on his Twitter is very different to what Congresswoman Luna is reporting. And Ivan is close to Lou. I wanted to talk about the difference of opinions that there are with Lue Elizondo being sick, allegedly. And I'm going to show you this because just hear what Congresswoman Luna said right here.
Coming out.
What happened with this week's hearing?
Well, we had two SCIF briefings this week, and
Yeah.
by the way, Mellon got sick, Lue Elizondo got sick,
Yeah.
and Mr. Grush also is not feeling well, but Grush has been very helpful.
Yeah.
So my message is, we got the SCIF. You guys need to be here for the SCIF briefings.
Okay, so that's Luna saying that all three of them got sick. People in the UFO community are calling this the SCIF Flu. And there's a lot of blaming going around. There's a lot of pointing fingers going around. And then Lou's lawyer, Ivan Hannel, said this. He is contradicting what Luna said right here. He says, let me be absolutely clear. Lue Elizondo was not sick, though admittedly he was exhausted from travels for personal and professional matters. But if anyone was actually ill, why mock it? I don't understand the SCIF flu comment was likely, hopefully, just a flippant remark, perhaps based on a miscommunication or misunderstanding within their small congressional group. But let's not lose the thread. After the first SCIF briefing scheduled on April 29th was abruptly canceled with virtually no notice the night before, after people had already traveled from across the country on their own time and dime, it's unreasonable to then simply say, we've got the room now, where are you? As if showing up on demand were a fair task. This isn't about avoiding doing the work and flying to DC. It's about basic respect, scheduling, and communication. And the truth is, many within the UFO community who have ties to members are reluctant to speak candidly to power. There is a real worry that any criticism might alienate a few members of Congress who are actively engaging in the issue of disclosure. But I ask you to consider the long view. If we don't assert the need for mutual respect now, if we don't expect it, what exactly should we expect in the future? Yes, Congress is important, but members are elected representatives, not monarchs. If this issue matters to you, meet the people halfway. So I say the same thing to Ivan, though, because yes, Congress people and politicians in general do have a shady kind of attitude, and they're constantly criticized. And I criticize them constantly. Matt Laszlo criticizes them constantly. But the same thing is happening with UFO celebrities in many cases. They become these unreachable people. And I don't know what the problem is with all of this miscommunication between both sides. I know that someone, I think it was Matt Ford, said that staffers were not being truthful to the Congress people themselves, meaning they maybe have moles within their staffs. I don't know if that's true, but there is an evident disconnect because Lue very clearly did not seem ill in the UFO festival he attended in Oregon. And I did say that he was very stressed out and that his nails were kind of blackened. It was kind of weird. I don't know if that means anything, but if Lue wasn't feeling okay, I'm guessing that Ivan is right. And this was just him being really tired and jet lagged and stressed out over everything that happened. I also can confirm that Lue did say to Stephen Diener from Unidentified Alien Podcast that he was taking a break from everything related to being in the spotlight and all that. I'm guessing the break is this, him attending festivals and promoting his book and all that, which is completely fine. I think that he needs to take a long break and then try to see the way in which he returns, because everything that happened with that picture, you just have to look at the headlines that were produced immediately after from the mainstream media, talking about how there was a photo that was not a UFO that was presented as a UFO photo. And even if Lue did not say that, that's what was reported on the mainstream media. And that was the mistake. That was what hurt the movement, in my opinion. If you look at it just from a pragmatic standpoint, just like that, technically it did hurt the movement. So I think Lue needs a break. And that's just me. There are others that have much stronger opinions about Lue and everything. And they're well within their right to think so. And before I continue, I just got to say, I do think that he needs to take a break. I do think that he made a mistake with the whole irrigation circles debacle. There's a lot more information that is not public yet, and I can't corroborate it yet, so I can't really talk about it yet, about that picture. And as soon as we get corroboration of some stuff happening with that picture that was shown, we will report on it, what actually happened. Ever since I got into this space, I started hearing rumors that there was some type of control that they wanted to exert on incoming content creators and journalists who were trying to cover this. And there is this type of a circle that they have. And honestly, if this circle does exist, there seems to be like a sort of like a control kind of mechanism they have, where I've heard they kind of tell you what you can talk about and what you can't talk about. And I've never ever allowed for that to happen to my channel and to any that I do on that I've done in journalism. Granted, my previous work is mostly with sports, but I've never allowed for that to happen. I had some issues with Marca before I left Marca, where I did write something about the mummies, and my article was actually manipulated afterwards. It was already one of the most read articles about something other than sports in the site's history. This was an article where I spoke about the DNA of the mummies. Biologist Ricardo Rangel gave me some statements about the DNA of Maria, and it was completely tampered with. And I that was one of the reasons why we had a major disagreement, and eventually we parted ways in Marca, because I absolutely hate that they manipulate my work. And I started hearing about this from the very beginning, that you were probably going to get invited to this club. They're part of a chat, and I've heard different things from different people. I've heard someone who says that they're really nice, that they're really engaging, that they do not control what you say. And I've heard the opposite from other people who were part of those chats, who believe that they're being surveilled, that they're just invited to these chats to keep an eye on them. They've told them what they can and can't say. I don't know what happens, because I don't want to be part of that in any way. So I can only rely on what people who have been in those groups have said in public. This is one of the main problems that we have right now in this ufology space, because before 2017, there was already this whole UFO-tainment industry it's still going on, right? But they had the whole topic by the balls. And it's whoever tells you that there's no money making in ufology, they're lying to you. There is money making in ufology. YouTube pays good money for views. A lot of people have sponsors and stuff. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. There isn't. What I see wrong in that is that if you make money doing this, you can't do it by spitting out lies, by not telling the truth or what you're trying to report on to be the truth. You can make mistakes. You can get something wrong out of a source, or even sources can mess you up. I remember I did a video that I'm going to show you right now.
You know, and I'm not just talking about like lights in the sky or crop circle in the middle of the woods, or even a story that they heard from a friend of a friend, something that they saw with their own eyes and they think is real.
My buddy at work, he loves talking about UFOs.
The objects that are being seen by commercial pilots are performing maneuvers that are unexplainable due to our current understanding of our technology.
Is there any indication that these UAPs could be essentially collecting reconnaissance?
Are you aware of any of our enemies that have that capability?
No. You know what he told me? He told me that the government will actually feed journalists fake stories on purpose, and then later they'll expose them, so they all look like frauds and nut jobs, and you can't trust anybody about anything. It's crazy, right? There's a whole team dedicated to it. What did he say they were called? The Aviation Group or something?
No, the Aviary.
What's that?
The Aviary, it's the group of individuals loosely associated with military intelligence. They act as disinformation agents, effectively. They create and spread fake government documents in order to discredit real legitimate researchers who are trying to talk about this stuff, as well as contaminating the flow of information so then nobody knows what's going on. I mean, you don't have to look far to find it, right? All you need is an internet connection. You can look up things like the Majestic 12 documents, Project Serpo, psychological operations of Paul Benowitz. He's an American citizen, for God's sake. I mean, it's everywhere. You can't escape it. So that's probably why nobody knows what's going on.
That's from Estimate of the Situation. Tom is my collaborator and friend. He's a friend of the show. He's been on the show. I think he's going to be on the show soon to talk about his new project, which is sort of like a film, really well produced. But this video that I just showed you that talks about the aviary, that's been happening for decades, where people who are new to the subject come on the scene and they try to talk about this stuff, and then they get engaged by agents who you don't know they are agents, and they talk to you and they start derailing whatever you're trying to do. They feed you false information so you can mess up, and they can mess up your reputation and your credibility. And this is something that is really difficult to navigate if you want to insert yourself in this topic. I know that there's people who don't want to even try to insert themselves in the topic For example, Christian Harloff, he doesn't have time to be talking to people, to be in the background, to do phone calls, all that. He's running 3 channels. His formula does work because he's just like the entry to ufology. You can just look at Christian's channel and that'll be a great entry to ufology. But if you want to dig deeper, you have to get engaged. You have to get involved with academics and scientists and even people from the intelligence community. And you need to develop a certain level of discernment so you can know when there's a story coming your way that you need to avoid because it's going to hurt whatever you're trying to do and your reputation. So it becomes really hard to learn how to identify who's just after you trying to hurt whatever you're trying to do because you're getting maybe too close to something, and who really genuinely believes that what you're doing is good work and they're really trying to help you. It becomes really difficult. So I've tried to stay in the sidelines as much as I can. I try to collaborate with people who I believe are proactive and they're adding to the whole conversation, not taking anything away from it. And so far, knock on wood, it's been okay. I haven't had any major issues. But this is a problem that I think persists. And for example, people like Lue Elizondo, I've never been able to fully trust him, even though I believe he's a good man. The vibe he gives off whenever he interacts with people is that of a positive, good man, a family man who is trying to help his country. But there's the counter-intel aspect of Lue Elizondo that cannot be ignored either. And even though he comes off as a good man, I would not be surprised if he is affecting the topic because he has a mentality that of helping his country for national security. And if that is the way he's operating in, it could very well be some counter-intel plot, and he could tell you that his reasons are just as valuable and as honorable as anybody's because he's doing it for the benefit of his country. So from that sense, you got to question things. Another aspect here is that people in ufology after 2017, we got a lot of new faces coming up. And the main problem there is that all of these new faces haven't been able to keep their ego in check, at least most of them, because they start getting a lot of people around them who eventually become just yes men instead of critical friends. Because I think whenever you're trying to get into any arena, any industry, and you become somewhat famous and people start looking up to you and giving you compliments all the time and want to take pictures with you, want your autograph and stuff like that, there's not many people who can learn how to control that, because that is feeding everybody's egos and it gets to people's heads. It always happens. It's really difficult to navigate. And that's one of the main issues that already existed pre-2017, and it still exists today post-2017. And it is as much the fault or responsibility of people who are right there in the middle, who are being praised constantly, as much as it is the responsibility of the person that is praising the UFO celebrity. It's both sides' responsibility, because when you see somebody who's famous within the UFO space, it's different. It should feel different to when you see a movie star or something like that. The UFO celebrity is, if they're doing their job as they should, trying to look out for the truth, there should be a very different dynamic between them and the people. They're not movie stars. They're just as normal as you and I. I think, for example, I was with Fepo from Podcast Paranormal, and Fepo understands this very well. He knows that he's very, very famous, stupidly famous, but he doesn't become like this exclusive guy who nobody can reach. That's ufology in a nutshell. If you want to reach any of these guys, you got to go through hoops. You gotta agree with them. In many cases, it's really difficult. They become unreachable people, as if they were movie stars. And with Feppo, it's different because he does meets and greets all the time. He travels everywhere. He knows how people regard him as somebody really important, covering these topics. But he's always there with them. He's always communicating with them. And whenever he meets someone, he's always really simple, nice, humble. And I spoke to him personally about this. And he also knows how in the US, this is a problem. Like, they become unreachable people, as if they were Tom Cruise or something like that. Man, the ones that get the most egotistical are academics and some scientists. They get out of control, man. I just gave you this rant at the beginning so I can explain to you how this whole thing works, how difficult it can be for people like me who are new to all of this, and we're just trying to explore all of these topics, and it just becomes increasingly difficult because there's always somebody who wants to share or feed you information that is not always true. Trying to get to all of those bigwigs has become a chore, a real task. And if getting to them compromises the way in which I report my news or my videos or topics on this channel, I prefer not to have contact with any of them. I wish that they understood that and they came on the channel and they allowed me to ask any question that I wanted. But in some cases, that's not the case. I can't. If you don't get directly reprimanded by the person themselves, there's a lot of people that are yes people that will go after you, that will attack you, that will harass you and try to dox you. And I just don't feel like having all of that on my plate. It's not worth the time. So I guess this is sort of a message for bigwigs and people who are like way up there in the UFO space. If you want to have a conversation with someone who is going to ask you some questions you may not like sometimes, I always try to be respectful about it, but it'd be nice to have any of you on the show. And yes, if I have Corbell on, for example, I will ask him about that documentary he did about the mummies, because I think that was a misrepresentation of what's actually going on. It kind of felt like a hit job against Maussan, who I honestly don't agree with in pretty much everything he does. But the important part of this is the case of the mummies. The mummies are important. It's not Jaime, really. Jaime is kind of like a double-edged kind of sword, because if it wasn't for him, the mummies would not have the relevance they have right now, or the popularity, let's say. He's the one who has the most access to most of the bodies, or a lot of them. The spotlight should be on the bodies, not on a person, really. But that's not happening. The spotlight is on people who are involved in the case, which is a mistake. And I think that Jeremy, the data that he was exposed to was the fake data. That's why he ran with the story like that. But there's a lot more data that he hasn't seen. And because of what he did, he hasn't even tried to look at all the data. And another example here is, for example, Jesse Michaels, who decided to travel, who's seen the bodies, and is reporting on the case in an objective and honest fashion. That's what should happen. So yeah, if I get Jeremy on, I'll ask him about that, because I think he needs to clarify a lot of what he said there. And if they don't want to because of that, I understand, but I'm just not going to play along with those narratives. It's just stupid. You guys should accept whoever wants to report on this and try to touch on everything and do it respectfully. I've never used ad hominem to report anything, really, because that's not what I'm about. But yeah, I ask uncomfortable questions. And yeah, they need to talk to each other a lot more, I think. Let me know what you think in the comments about this difference of opinion that they're having right now, about Lue not being sick, about this culture in ufology of cult of personality that exists in ufology. It already existed pre-2017 with people like Dr. Greer and others, and it still exists today with people like Lue and others. What do you think about that? Do you think that's the best way to try and explore these topics? Or do you think the cult of personality is even needed in ufology? Let me know what you think in the comments. If you like the content you see, I'm going to ask you to like, share, comment, subscribe. Subscribe. It costs you nothing, just a few seconds. And that's what helps us the most. So, and hit the bell if you can. But if you want to support the channel in any other way, there's a few links down there that you can pick from. You can support us on KGRA, or you can also become a member here on YouTube. Anything you choose to do is always appreciated. So thank you. And that's it for me today on this video, but I'll see you guys in the next one. Remember, stay curious and inquisitive always. Bye.